Emotional content is filmed on Whadjuk Noongar land. This podcast acknowledges the traditional owners and custodians of country. Always was, always will be, Aboriginal land. This episode contains discussions of suicide and other challenging life experiences that may be distressing to some listeners. Please take care when listening. For immediate support, contact Lifeline on 13 11 14. Additional resources are available on our website at emotionalcontent.com.au. Come for the stories, stay for the connection. I'm your host, Amy Jane Brand, and this is your weekly dose of emotional content. Hey everyone, and welcome to the second episode ever of Emotional Content. I wanted to start this podcast with a bang, and I felt like I really needed to set the tone of the podcast by being as vulnerable as possible. And this particular thing that I've kept offline for years is extremely vulnerable for me. I never thought that I would be in a place where I would be open about this because it was so traumatic and I was feeling so much shame around it. But I just know that my story with this has the power to help so many people. If you're considering getting surgery or you've had an outcome that you are not happy with, then this episode is for you. I have left out no details. It's extremely educational and it's very informative. By sharing my story, I really hope that it makes people think twice before surgery. Even if you do want to go for surgery, just making a more informed decision and knowing what to look out for. With how much surgery is getting glorified, currently going overseas for it, it really scares me. And I just hope that this will give people a little bit more insight and education around how serious getting plastic surgery actually is. So here it is, one of my most vulnerable stories officially out on the internet. I give you my plastic surgery nightmare. Wow, I am super nervous for this. I have picked a pretty vulnerable subject. Well, for me, it's extremely vulnerable. And a little part of me is telling me not to do this, but I really wanted to start the podcast with full transparency. And this, I feel, is the best way for me to start. So I'm going to paint you a picture from where this all began. Obviously, the title of this podcast is pretty obvious. It's about my journey with plastic surgery, but I wanted to tell you why I went down that path. So here it goes. When I was younger, I actually started in primary school. I got really quite severely bullied. It was a difficult time in my life from primary school, I'd say about year 6, all the way up to about year 10. It was me just getting bullied for the way that I looked. I felt like the ugly duckling, and I was definitely treated like that. It was mostly boys that would give me a hard time. I didn't have too many issues with girls saying anything about the way I looked. It was always boys, and it built a very insecure little girl in me. I never felt good enough. I never felt accepted. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate with that, just never feeling like you're enough. My self-worth was low from the get-go. Until now, I don't really ever remember feeling genuinely good about myself or in my skin. I never accepted myself. I never appreciated myself. And I was always searching for that approval based on how I looked. I had really pale skin, which I still do now, but I've fake tanned for this. It's a light fake tan, but I've fake tanned. It felt like being English, I didn't really meet up to the beach bum standard. I had really small boobs in high school and I was very skinny. So I was kind of like just the really skinny pale girl. But for some reason, I was an absolute target because of that. I was also really bad at school. I actually went undiagnosed with ADHD my whole schooling. Only now as an adult have I recognised that that's an issue. And it made a lot of sense. It made a lot of sense to understand myself with the ADHD. But back then I struggled. And my father, who's now passed away, he was very hard on me about being good at school. wanted to have good grades, wanted to see me excel academically. And because of that, I was always searching for the approval of my father as well. And I never seemed to really get that from him. So it built a real complex where I was always seeking the approval of boys, my dad, the masculine energy. I was always seeking approval for that. And I had really low self-worth. So fast forward to 18 years old, by that point, I was so ready to get myself a pair of boobs. I had tried when I was younger to go to the doctors and get put on a really strong contraceptive pill. I was hoping that that would give me boobs because there was a lot of girls that I knew that it was giving boobs. I remember even trying to eat like hormonal filled chicken, KFC chicken and all that shit back then, and nothing was working. So the next best thing was plastic surgery. And that's where everything went downhill for me. I guess I just really wanted to be seen as beautiful, and I thought surgery was going to give me that. Obviously being younger, going through a lot. Yeah, I didn't really know any better. And no one was really talking about like self-love, and there was no information such as this podcast of somebody going through this. There was no one really to talk to. It was just like, I just saw the girls in the magazines and I wanted to be that. I wanted to be a Zoo Weekly cover model. I wanted to be in FHM. I wanted to be in Maxim. And I did actually end up having quite a big career as a glamour model, and that's what I had set my sights on. So fast forward to me being 20, I started seriously looking into surgery. For legal reasons, I'm not going to be naming what surgeons until the end. I'm not going to name 3 of them, but I will be naming one of them. Yeah, I guess that's just another reason why I'm kind of nervous filming this, because I have felt like I've had to keep quiet for a really long time. For that reason too, surgeons can be really scary. So I had done all of my research, well, so I thought, and I decided on this particular surgeon. Social media was starting to boom then, so Instagram, Facebook, all of that. I was on there looking at all of these patients' photos, befores and afters, mostly afters. It was like mostly their selfies and then some professional studio shots taken, and it all just looked really beautiful. And I was like, wow, that's what I'm after. That's what I want. I would definitely say it was a social media based decision, which is never a good idea. And I'll go into why later. This surgeon also worked on other models as well. So I was just really convinced at that point. And I thought, okay, this is like my next step to becoming the person that I want to be, the glamour model that I want to be, the career I want to have, the lifestyle I want to have. So I made an appointment and I flew over to the East Coast for my first ever consultation. This surgeon had a really great team. I really liked the consultation. It went really well. I also really liked his bedside manner. When I say bedside manner, I kind of mean like how they present themselves, how they treat you, how they talk to you. The whole consultation just had a really good feel. So I felt quite confident at the time. I also, this makes me laugh because I did this multiple times. I went into my consultation with photos of what I don't want printed out in a little folder and photos of exactly what I did want. And let me know if anyone else has ever done this in a plastic surgery consultation, because I don't know anyone else that has gone to the extent of printing what they definitely don't want and what they absolutely do want. To be honest, I thought I was just like doing my due diligence to just safeguard myself. I really thought I was safeguarding myself from having any complications. I even sat on YouTube and I was like watching the procedures done. I wanted to be completely informed, and I felt like I had really, done everything that I could in order to not have any complications. This surgeon in particular loved using an implant, which is called a fuzzy Brazilian. Now, this was a long time ago. I don't even think that they have much popularity anymore in Australia, but these implants are produced in Brazil and they've got a foam covering around the outer shell. The whole marketing scheme behind it was to tell you that you basically never had to wear a bra again. They just just would defy gravity even over time. Your breast capsule would adhere to it and it would basically keep it like it was its own bra, basically. They just said that it would never have to be replaced. It was just very, very well marketed. So I was like, okay, it must be the Ferrari of implants. Like, I was pretty convinced. I mean, yeah, I didn't know any better and I just thought, okay, it felt really fucking weird though. Like, imagine picking up an implant, if you ever have, and then it's just covered in like a white kind of foam, a really thin layer. Bizarre. And it felt even worse when it was inside my chest. However, the surgeon decided on a 315cc high-profile polyurethane covered, which is the foam outer casing, fuzzy Brazilian implant in a teardrop shape, silicone, and it was made by SiliMed. Throughout this episode, I'm going to give you all the details and the surgical notes and things like that so you can be well informed as to what I had. So for this primary breast augmentation, which means first, I was quoted 11,000 Australian dollars. So when the surgery day came along, I was not nervous at all. I honestly went in there dancing as a joke, quite literally went in there dancing. I wasn't nervous. I was ready. I could not wait to get a set of boobs. Like, I had been dreaming of this day for a really long time and I thought that it was going to solve all of my problems, which is hilarious looking back at it. The recovery wasn't easy. I remember waking up and I've never had this issue again, and this would be down to the anaesthetist at the time, but I woke up really severely cross-eyed. It was like my vision was cross-eyed, not my eyes. Like, I didn't physically look cross-eyed, if that makes sense. Anyway, I had really blurry vision. I couldn't see a fucking thing, and it was really scary. That happened for a while, and then I think I was given a muscle relaxant, I'm pretty sure. I was given Valium. I really liked the way that my boobs looked quite early on. A few days after getting the surgery done, I noticed that I was very numb underneath my breasts, not the actual nipple, but underneath the nipple down to the scar. And I was worried about that. And I also had a really big scar. And from the previous surgeries that I had watched online and researched, I was like, that's really weird. Should be around like, I don't know. I mean, each surgeon is different, but I'm guessing around the 3 to 4 centimetre mark, maybe 5. Mine is about 10. And apparently, without me realising or knowing, the scar was going to be a lot longer than everyone else's to get that foam covered implant in. Unfortunately, even to this day, half of both breasts are completely numb. My nipples are completely fine. I can guarantee you I would have had a fucking meltdown if my nipples were not okay. I was really happy with the way that my boobs looked. They were natural. They looked really good when I first got them, but I was starting to notice quite early on a really dull aching within my boobs. It was just like a permanent kind of headache, but in my chest is the best way I could explain it. They didn't move very easily. They felt very uncomfortable when I like put a push-up bra on, pushing them together. It just felt like a constant foreign object or 2 foreign objects that were inside my body, and it just wasn't comfortable. Like, it always felt like it wasn't supposed to be there. Those implants in particular were just fucking uncomfortable. About a year in, I started noticing that my implants were dropping. I didn't know what was happening at the time, but I was getting a case of bottoming out. Bottoming out is when they start to come out of the pocket. By the end of it, they were basically sitting, or like it felt like they were sitting right on my top rib, and my nipples started to travel upwards. So the gap between my nipple and my incision was getting bigger, which meant my nipple was sitting higher because the implant was falling down. And being that they were teardrop-shaped anatomical implants, it was giving even more of that kind of like ski jump look. It wasn't good. I knew something was wrong. It was getting more and more uncomfortable. I was extremely unhappy. I'm pretty sure my very first shoot with Zoo Weekly was with that breast augmentation. And I just remember like struggling to cover my nipple. And I knew that there was a serious problem at that point. I went for a follow-up consultation and I was basically told by the surgeon and their team that my boobs looked ultra natural and that there was no issues. And they also said at the time that the feeling should come back in my boobs. It just takes longer than usual for some patients. That never happened. And I know that that's a risk with surgery, like you risk with breast augmentation, things going numb and all that type of thing. So look, it didn't affect my nipple. It was very weird to get used to. I still put it down to the way that my pocket internally was cut, but who knows? I'm not a surgeon. I just know how I feel now. After basically being told that there was no issues, I went ahead and did my own research and I dove really deep. I decided I was going to find out what the fuck was wrong with my boobs because I knew there was a problem. You can't really gaslight me into thinking that there's no issue when I can feel the pain every single day. And they'll do that. Some surgeons will definitely try and just gaslight the fuck out of you when you voice your concerns with their work. I continued with the discomfort for a few years. Surgery is expensive. Revision is expensive. I had to get the money together. During that time, I was working and looking for the next surgeon to hopefully fix my issues. And I was really, really praying that if I went to another surgeon, did all my research and went to someone who looked really good, this would be the last breast surgery that I had. Then came surgeon number 2. I found this surgeon again on social media. Back then, I don't know if any of you will remember, but there was such a huge influx of surgeons posting like footage of them doing surgical procedures on Snapchat. And I got pretty sucked into that. I was like, wow, that's pretty confident. Like all of these other models were posting lots of happy patients, lots of patient selfies. Again, I was really sucked into that whole like, well, if you're killing it on social media, there's all these raving social media reviews. That must mean that they're pretty great. I went for a consult and I was pretty nervous because there was a lot of talk with their assistant and the surgeon that we would have to upsize quite a lot. And I was really nervous about that. I went in there wanting to fix whatever this issue was, which I found out was double bubble. Well, it's bottoming out, double bubble. I think they're pretty much considered the same type of thing. I didn't get that double bubble effect, but I had the bottoming out and I wanted potentially a little bit more cleavage. So those were the things that I wanted to fix with my boobs. And I also decided at that point that I really wanted to get my nose done. My nose was actually really sad. It's sad thinking about it, but I actually had quite a good nose, what I would consider a good nose originally, but I didn't like the way that it looked when I was shooting photos from the side. So I wanted to just simply, do a shaving of the cartilage on the side. So my side profile it kind of like hooked a little bit, just slightly. But in photos, and the work that I was doing, I would notice photographers changing it. Back then, especially in the glamour modelling days, photographers would be pretty guilty of editing the fuck out of your photos as well. And yeah, that built a bit of a complex. It's something that I didn't particularly like, but after seeing it edited a few times, that did bother me. So I thought, okay, if I get it done, I might as well just do it all in one surgery rather than having to be put under anaesthetic twice. You pay double the anaesthetic fees and hospital fees and things like that. So it seemed more cost effective and just quicker for me. And I didn't know it would have been better to go to someone who specialised in rhinoplasty. That was quite a big mistake for me, unfortunately. I went back for multiple consultations, not just the first one, about the breast implants because I was really freaking out about the change in implant. So the surgeon decided to do a revision using 430 cc. That's a jump from 315 to 430. That's a big jump. Using 430 cc textured, round, ultra high profile implants made by Mentor. Silimed was the first company. The second was Mentor. In regards to profile difference, we're going from high profile to ultra high profile. That means how it projects forward. So the more that it projects forward, the more narrow the base is going to be. So if you wanted to upsize on someone with my size chest, you would have to go an ultra high profile. However, we were changing also from a teardrop shape to a round implant, which it all just was a very big change. It was basically going from what looked very natural at the very beginning to something that looked like a Barbie chest. I was told that I needed to go up that much in order to fix my issue. I'm not a surgeon. I didn't know at the time that that is completely incorrect. I wish I listened to my gut. I was just so convinced that, this surgeon's arrogance and also what I would call poor bedside manner, I was bypassing that for how great the surgical technique and ability of this surgeon would be. And I really, really regret that because my gut was trying to tell me the whole time that this wasn't right. And not only was I going to trust this surgeon to do my revision, I was also trusting them to do a rhinoplasty. If I regret anything in my life, it's probably going ahead and not listening to that gut feeling. I don't like to live in regret, but what followed after was extremely painful. It was a painful experience for me. So I was quoted $13,500 Australian for the breast revision and $11,000 Australian for the rhinoplasty. Plus GST, that was around almost $25,000. Surgery day came around. I was extremely nervous. I mean, I really was shitting myself. And it was a big contrast from the first time not being nervous at all to this being really, really nervous. I remember laying down for surgery. They were about to put me under anaesthetic and I was bawling my eyes out. I was really, really stressed out. You would expect somebody on that team, nurses, anaesthetists, definitely the surgeon, to just take a moment, check if you're okay. None of that happened. I remember bawling my eyes out, tears streaming down my face, and it was just count backwards, bang, and I was out. When I woke up, it was the very first thing that I thought about. The very first thing that came to mind when I woke up, not how did my surgery go? It was, wow, they didn't give a shit. I was treated like a fucking number. It was like in that moment I knew that I have made a really, really big mistake. Waking up and getting past that thought, I realised that my chest felt really, really heavy and tight. I felt enormous compared to what I was before. And I thought, okay, it's just the swelling, being, tight in the chest, like that's normal. My breath felt pretty shallow. I was quite anxious, which didn't help, but it just felt like I had a fucking truck sitting on my chest. My nose was pretty numb. I didn't notice any issues there. I was just covered in bandages and had 2 internal splints and a splint on the outside as well. First issue that I noticed with my surgery was the fact that I suddenly didn't have any gap between my breasts. It was like maybe 0.5 of a centimetre, if that. Yeah, it was basically felt like my implants were touching and I didn't like the way that that looked. This surgery didn't require for me to wear a compression post-surgical bra afterwards. So I could see my boobs straight away and I could feel them. I had feeling in my nipple again, which is another thing that I always freaked out about. But then I contacted the clinic and I said, hey, voiced my concerns with the fact that I was lacking a gap between my breasts. And I was told to religiously wear an underwire bra, which I did. I have ADHD. I hyper-focus on things. If I'm going to do something, I'm going to fucking do it. And I wore that bra nonstop. I didn't have a break. Slept in it. Only time I didn't wear it is for the shower. But I wore that thing constantly. And unfortunately, I saw absolutely no change. It was just extremely uncomfortable. It started feeling like the skin between my breasts was lifting. I felt like there was another issue going on there. So I ended up having one of my post-operative appointments and I voiced my concerns about that again. And again, I was told to wear the underwire bra. It was still early, a few weeks in. So I was really trying to just trust the process, even though my gut was saying that something was definitely wrong. At this appointment, I had my nose bandages taken off and I was actually quite happy with my nose. When I first looked at it, I was like, okay, I wasn't very well versed on rhinoplasty. So when that got taken off, it looked pretty normal and I was all good. So I went home and I did exactly what I was told. More weeks had passed and I asked for another follow-up appointment in regards to my breasts. I was freaking out at this point. There was absolutely no change with my boobs. I felt really uncomfortable. They felt really big. I just felt like this was the wrong call. I was really unhappy, and I went in there feeling really scared, and I was very vulnerable and just upset. I voiced my concerns. I said I was really unhappy with how artificial that they looked. Unfortunately, to put it lightly, the surgeon didn't take kindly to my concerns. He ended up walking out extremely unhappy with what I had said. So that was really awkward. I ended up getting an email 24 hours later. This email stated that the surgeon was willing to change my implants for something smaller. It was like a little contract basically saying that the surgeon will make the implants smaller on this date, on this time. There's absolutely no changes. Like I had to be there and then prepared to do the surgery at no cost. However, I was also signing off on being discharged from this surgeon's care a week after the surgery. So to put it simply, the surgeon was making themselves not liable for any potential post-operative complications. And that was a massive red flag for me. It was unexpected. It was quite an aggressive email. Yeah, I just decided that that was not going to work for me. The trust had been broken. It was awkward. It wasn't nice. It wasn't good energy between us. Communication was pretty broken, and it's not an ideal situation to go under the knife to someone like that again. Obviously, that surgeon wasn't happy with what I had said and how I felt about the work that was done, and to go under the knife to someone who's like clearly pissed off at you is just, it's not ideal, and I wasn't prepared to do that. Unfortunately, things took a turn for the worst. I obviously wasn't happy with my breasts, but at the time I thought I'm just going to have to deal with that right now. I can't afford another surgery. I just need to figure out what I'm going to do and just settle with what I have. 4 months went by and I started noticing really bad issues with my nose. And this is where things got really dark for me very quickly. Oh, fuck. I still feel traumatized by this. So I contacted the surgeon again, voicing my concerns about what I had with my nose. I started noticing that my nose was pinching in quite badly at the tip, and it started to look off center, which was really scary. The more that the swelling went down, the more that the work underneath that swelling was starting to refine and show to the surface. I started really struggling with going to the gym and being physical, like physical exercise felt way more difficult for me. And I thought, oh, it's just because you've had surgery, you've been out of the gym for a while. I kind of bypassed that for a little bit. I thought it's just me being unfit. I was never the biggest fan of cardio. I'm still not. But yeah, even just going for like a walk outside for my mental health, that became difficult. And that's when I knew that's not really normal for me. When I spoke to the clinic and the surgeon about it, I was told that they could go back in, open up my nose again and fix the issues that I had. I was never really told what the issues were. I was a bit too scared to go back into the clinic again because of the last experience. I was doing my research really thoroughly at the time about my nose and what was going on. And what I read was that you're not supposed to be reopening a rhinoplasty for at least 12 months because of all the swelling and it being such an intricate thing. Like, it's not just an aesthetic thing, your nose. It's more serious. It's your breathing. Like, it's a very serious surgery, and to reopen it too soon can cause even more issues. So you're willing to open up my nose about 4 months later from the first surgery. Again, red flag. I was really upset about the whole thing, but I knew I was never going to go back to that surgeon anyway. I just felt like it was imperative that I let them know that that surgery also didn't go well and something was wrong. Things kept going downhill from here for me. I got really, really depressed. Looking at your nose every single day, as superficial as it might sound, looks were everything to me back then as well. I was so obsessed with perfection and looking a certain way and thinking that that was going to make me good enough to other people. So that's the headspace that I was in. And I remember just doing my makeup and my skincare or getting out the shower and just looking at my face and just not even recognizing myself anymore. And it just made me really depressed. And I didn't have the money at the time to fix it. And I didn't know who to go to, because the more research I did, the more I realized that this second time that it was done, it had to be right. Like, it couldn't be done by someone who didn't know what they were doing. I still to this day don't know who did it, but there was a gossip website at the time. And I tried searching it so I could tell you guys exactly what website it was, but I think it's been taken down. I had a couple of friends that were on it and they couldn't find the horrible things that were written about them anymore either. I was told about something that had been written into this website, and I think it was called like Ask Nick or something. And it was just this American dude that would write back to things that people wrote in anonymously. And it was something along the lines of, hey, check out this Australian model. Her name's Amy Jane Brand. What do you think of her? I don't think much of her myself. And this guy wrote back and was like, nose job is terrible. She looks like Michael Jackson. And at this time, I was really trying to hide my nose for work and being on social media. I started face tuning my nose to make it straighter and to smooth out the pinching. So I stopped doing video for quite a while because I was just so embarrassed about that. But reading all of the comments giving me shit about the way that I looked was the icing on the cake. After that, I got really suicidal. I had attempted twice when I was younger, around after my dad passed away. So for me to get back in that headspace where I didn't want to be around anymore was really scary. So at that time, things were really dark and I was going downhill really fast. Luckily, fortunately, my mum said to me, find somebody good, find a really good surgeon here in Australia and I will lend you the money, because I don't think I would have survived. I couldn't breathe properly anymore. I couldn't work out anymore. I wasn't able to do the things that I liked. So I felt even more secluded and I was so concerned about what people thought of my nose. So I didn't go out anymore. I was turning into a fucking hermit and I was suicidal. All I could think about was just a way out of this nightmare. So then the journey started of me figuring out who the fuck was going to fix my nose. Fortunately, I found a website called Real Self. And I swear by this website. It's free. You can sign up to it. It gives you all the details, patients' real reviews. There's no way of hiding it. Surgeons don't have control of it. It's not like Facebook or social media or anything like that. It was just real patient reviews. And I really needed to find somebody good, because with rhinoplasty, the more times that you open it up, the more chances of a less desirable result that you get. So it's like I had to get this second time right. Couldn't get this wrong again. I was terrified. This is when I found Dr. Greensmith. Dr. Greensmith is a Melbourne-based plastic surgeon. He's a specialty plastic surgeon in revision rhinoplasty reconstruction, and breast reconstruction. I spent a year searching for a surgeon. And when I found him, it was like I knew, reading everybody's reviews, and especially being a surgeon that wasn't just all over social media, I took that as such a green flag. And I know that especially back then, I wouldn't have found him if it wasn't for that website. Dr. Greensmith had been practicing for over 20 years at the time, which is amazing. He also co-led the separation of, I don't know if you remember back in 2009, the two conjoined twins, Trishna and Krishna. That was really impressive to me. I was like, wow, okay, if you're doing that kind of surgery, then you really must know what you're doing. He's also the founder of Your Breast, which was created to combat the dodgy work that was being done over in Thailand. And there was some clinics in Australia that were doing dodgy work as well. So they were basically matching the prices that they were offering in order for people to get breast augmentations done safely down at the Melbourne Institute of Plastic Surgery, which is where he works. After all of that research, I finally booked in a consultation with him. He was the second doctor that I had a consultation with. The first one didn't seem very confident and was in a different state. I decided on Dr. Greensmith after having that consultation with him. I was completely and 100% sold. I took my friend Kylie with me. I was really traumatized when I went into that consultation, and he really put me at ease. He was very realistic about what kind of outcomes I would have. He didn't show pony anything. He was very to the point, but was also very compassionate and understanding for my situation. And I really felt like I could trust him from the get-go. I definitely have to say that Dr. Greensmith under-promises and over-delivers. And at the time, I was honestly just at a point where I wanted to be looked after. A really good bedside manner was essential for me. The previous surgeon, I ignored the ego and the arrogance. once, and I promised myself I wasn't going to do that again. At the time, I also did a consult on my breasts. I wanted to go to Dr. Greensmith for that as well, depending on how things went with my nose. So I thought, why not get a consult with that too? So he looked over both and then told me what I was going to have done with my nose in order to fix it. I was pretty taken aback with what I would have to do to fix it. I didn't realize what was even going on with my nose at the time. I'll tell you exactly what issues he found and the surgical notes that were made. There was multiple asymmetries underlining, surgically weakened structures that had collapsed, along with twisted framework. So that's the more clinical way of saying it. I needed to have a total septoplasty to correct my excessively short and collapsed nose, which also had severe obstruction of internal valves, and it needed to be reconstructed with a rib graft. So I had to have a piece of cartilage removed from my left rib in order to help reconstruct the structure of my nose. At the time, the thought of having to do that was devastating. This was a really big surgery, and I did trust Dr. Greensmith. However, I was still terrified because I'm having to move like a piece of my body into my face, and the whole thing was just, it was a lot to take in at the time. For this surgery, I was quoted 20,000 Australian dollars, which thankfully I was able to borrow from my mother at the time. I'm so thankful for her. A lot of people get surgery done and things like this happen and they literally can't afford to get it fixed. It just breaks my heart at the amount of people that that's happened to. So I consider myself extremely fortunate to have had that help. Again, I don't know what I would have done. I don't know how I would have ended up. The nose was only going to continue getting worse. And if you don't have the financials to fix the issues, then what do you do? So many people would have been in the same situation as me and not had any help and thought that they were going to the right person and thought that they were going to be looked after if things went wrong, and they don't. It breaks my heart to know how many people have been through the same situation, because I'm sure there's plenty of people that have. Surgery day came around and I was shitting myself for this one. They were lovely and understanding with me. The whole team was. They understood what happened to me and what I was going through to fix it. I was under anaesthetic for 6 hours. It was a really hard recovery. I remember waking up really violently unwell, like I needed to vomit. The nurse wouldn't give me water because they usually don't when you first wake up. And I remember just vomiting all over myself, and it was thick, dark red blood that had been pooling in my stomach from the surgery, which was quite normal. But yeah, I just remember I started freaking out. You know, I was just coming out of a very long session of anaesthetic. I also woke up with a pain pack in my rib that went around that cartilage that had been taken, and I needed to stay overnight. So it was quite an intense surgery in order to fix my nose. When I saw Dr. Greensmith the next day, he said that the surgery went really well and that it was definitely in the top 5 most difficult revision rhinoplasties he's had to do. He said everything that could have been wrong with my nose was wrong, but he managed to fix it. Dr. Greensmith is just such a legend. He completely changed my life. You know, I was more confident with my face then. I could breathe. I could fucking go to the gym. Like, it did. It completely changed my life. I wasn't a hermit anymore. Yes, I was unhappy with my boobs, but I was so happy to be able to just function again as normal. And even when the cast was taken off for my nose, it was so swollen, but I was so happy to have a nose that looked like it hadn't had a nose job. I didn't want an artificial looking nose, and the swelling even made me happy. I remember crying tears of just pure joy, and so did my mum. My mum flew over to look after me for that surgery. It was all fucking worth it, spending a year researching and flying down to Melbourne. And that was back in August 2016. And I'm really happy with my nose still. So fast forward to 2018, I was now living in Los Angeles. And at this point, my nose was perfectly healed. I was really happy with that, but I still needed to get my breasts redone because I was very unhappy with those still. It was also very apparent that I had a complication now called somastia. Somastia is one of the most difficult complications to fix in breast revision. It's where the 2 implants meet in the middle, so creating no gap. The skin lifts above the sternum and it creates what they call like a monoboob. They were also very firm. They didn't move. The last surgery that was done on my boobs, there was an internal bra used as well as permanent barbed sutures, so those sutures don't dissolve, and it definitely definitely kept my boobs all in one place. So living in LA at the time, I decided to look into a surgeon over there rather than going back down to Melbourne. I really just wanted to heal at home and not be flying and not be asking people to come and look after me. And I wanted to get this done and then keep working over in LA. And I was DJing at the time. So I really just wanted to continue with my work and make this a thing of the past. The surgeon that I chose over there was heavily recommended to me, personal recommendations of friends. I was very convinced that this would be something easy for a Beverly Hills surgeon to do. They were a specialist surgeon in breast augmentation. This surgeon was pretty big on posting on social media. Again, because I had friends that went there and other models that had gone there, I thought that it would be okay. When I went to the consultation, we agreed that he would be able to fix the somastia and we would be downsizing the implant. Even though he was concerned about downsizing too much, I really wanted to do that. I just kind of thought to myself, if I get skin that's a little bit looser than before, so be it. I just want to be more comfortable and not feel the way that I'm feeling. At the time, he seemed really confident to fix my complications, so I decided to go ahead with it. And at that time, I was quoted $10,000, which works out to be about 15,000 Australian. On surgery day, I rocked up. Everything was pretty normal. I was getting the measurements drawn on me. And again, the surgeon voiced that he was concerned about downsizing too much. I did say to him verbally at the time that I would be happy to go up in size a little bit bigger if needed. That's just the cc's, so how much they're filled, but no bigger than 390 cc's. At the time, I was currently 430 cc's, so downsizing to 390 would have been enough for me. It would have just given me a little bit less tightness in my chest and made me feel a bit better. The surgeon agreed with me and seemed really happy that I was keen to go up slightly from what we had agreed upon, and he seemed way more confident at the time after I said that, so I thought, okay, well, maybe that was a good decision. After the surgery, I felt pretty good, came out. Surgeries are done a bit differently over in America. I don't know if it's the same with all surgeons, but they have their clinic and they also do the surgeries in clinic. They have their own private little hospital. It's not like going to a public or a private hospital in Australia. And then about 24 hours later, I remember feeling like my boobs were still really big. They were flatter, but they were bigger. It was bizarre. So I went through my surgical papers and I realized what had been done. I looked and you get the little receipts from each implant with the serial numbers and all that kind of stuff, and then also the size and the type. The surgeon had gone even bigger than what we had agreed upon and even bigger than what I just originally had. So he put in 445 cc's, smooth, round silicone, moderate projection implants by Allergan. These implants were a different texture on the outside. They were smooth, so they weren't textured. I felt the difference. 110% I felt the difference. It felt like these implants were just rolling around in my chest. The reason they felt flatter is because the projection had been taken from ultra high profile, which is the top, to the second lowest, which is moderate, meaning that the base of the implant was wider now and the size was also bigger. So he didn't open up the gap by putting in a smaller implant. He closed the gap even further by putting a wider implant in. I had no cleavage. I really felt like I had a mono boob at this point. And I remember absolutely losing my fucking shit. I had a fucking meltdown. I was sore. I was bandaged up. I was in pain and I was mentally absolutely losing my fucking mind. When you sign paperwork for a surgery, you're pretty much signing your rights away. It was his story against mine, and I already knew that there was going to be no legal battle with this. I was just going to have to figure out what the fuck I'm going to do from here. I went in for my usual post-operative visit and I said to them, I've got no cleavage and I never agreed to going moderate. I was quite aware of the measurements of my chest and what it meant by changing the projection. No other surgeon before would have gone to a moderate. My primary surgery wasn't even moderate. So, of course, I was told how great my boobs look by the team, the assistant and the surgeon. It's so typical. They did this weird thing where they got like a piece of paper and put it over my chest to show me the cleavage I had above it. And I didn't have any. It was just so bizarre, the whole thing. I was in crisis at this point. I just felt like my world was crashing down. It was more money spent on more failure. So I did what I could only really do, which was contact Dr. Greensmith's rooms. In my Skype call with Dr. Greensmith, I was obviously a mess. He was really understanding as always, but he did say to me that because now I won't have that old capsule around the implant to work with, I would now need to stay pretty still, sedentary, not do much, definitely don't work out, don't lift anything heavier than my iPhone, because he needed a new capsule for him to work with in my third breast revision, fourth boob job, all up. So I had to do nothing for 4 months. I had to sit there and heal and just pray that I was going to have enough capsule formed for this next surgery that I was having. I was really sad because I really wanted this issue fixed. I was going through all the pain of it again. I knew I was going to have more surgery again. So it was a big fuck up. It was a very big fuck up. I should have just gone to Dr. Greensmith and I wouldn't have had to have 4 boob jobs. I would have just had 3. But, that's the choices that I made, and I just have to try and not, live regretting that now. At the time, the depression was setting in again, and I had to, prior to this surgery, take a whole bunch of content. With all of my surgeries, I would take weeks worth of content before getting anything done, so that when I was healing in bed, I was posting as if I was like doing all these things and doing these photo shoots, and I would get all my work done prior. Obviously, I had to start taking content again when I was healing from that surgery over the 4 months. So, I had to just get on with it, really. Yeah, I was just living a big lie. And it was really, really difficult to live in the shadows on social media for me. I just felt more and more secluded. I didn't want to be social. I just didn't feel like me. Going through all of that stuff behind closed doors was really hard, and just like lying to the internet. But I was really scared, and I feel like I just wasn't in a place where I could have been honest about it at the time. So for my 4th breast surgery, my 3rd revision, I was quoted 11,000 Australian dollars, and we had decided together, because I was part of the choosing process with this, which felt really good. I felt really empowered by that as well. Dr. Greensmith and I both decided on 385 cc's Motiva, which is the brand, ergonomics, nano-textured, ultra-high profile implants. So I was sizing down. I was going back to ultra-high profile, which was giving me a more narrow base, which would create a gap between my breasts. And we were going for the ergonomics, which I really love these implants. I feel like the most comfortable I ever have with these implants. I've definitely had my fair share of each implant. So I've used Silimed, which was the fuzzy Brazilian ones. Then I went to Mentor, which was the textured silicone ones. Then the smooth silicone ones by Allergan. Now I have Motiva ergonomics. The ergonomics are really cool implants, actually. They work with gravity. So when you're standing up, you get more of a teardrop shape. And when you're lying down, you get more of a round shape. So you get that fullness like you would a natural breast when you're laying down. I absolutely swear by these implants. When I talked to Dr. Greensmith about it, he said that these implants are really great for revision. I've had no complications. I think the reason why they're good for revision is also because they don't create much of a capsule. I had capsule contracture with my previous implants in the 2nd breast augmentation. So my 1st breast revision, I got pretty severe capsular contracture. It wasn't visible, but that's what was another reason that they were so hard and firm and didn't move. If you want to know what capsular contracture is, it's the hardening of the capsule around your breast implant, which is the scar tissue. What needed to be done in this 4th breast surgery for me was the correction of somastia and malposition, removal of large implants, create a neo pocket, which was quite difficult, which is in regards to the pocket that the implants sit in, used an internal bra technique, which I had had once before and was getting again, and the enclosure of the pocket and downsize of the implant because the pocket that my implant was sitting in was far too large. On the day of the surgery, I was nervous but also feeling quite confident. It was the easiest I had felt since the very first surgery. I could trust Dr. Greensmith and I knew that he was going to look after me regardless of what happened, and I trusted his team, so it was relatively easy. The surgery took around 2 to 3 hours for that revision. During the recovery of that surgery, I wore something called a thong bra. A thong bra is made by an Australian company. It's a small business. It keeps the separation between your boobs after surgery during the recovery process, and it helps that skin go back down onto your sternum for somastia patients. I found it online. I wasn't told to go and buy that, but because I was doing so much research at the time, I decided to look into how to fix somastia further, and that popped up. It just stabilizes the breast implants to keep them apart. So to anybody that's going through the same complications, I definitely highly recommend the thong bra. So look into that one. It's a little bit expensive because it's handmade, but it's definitely worth it. My boobs now, I've had absolutely no complications. I'm so happy with them. Honestly, you couldn't tell that I've had my boobs done 4 times. Each time that you get a revision, they cut out the old scar and give you a new one. So it's not like I'm all scarred up. And I'm just so happy with the results. I wasn't expecting much. I didn't expect my boobs to look really good or for them to be something that I was like stoked with. I just wanted something more comfortable, and it totally exceeded my expectations. I've had no issues with the skin. That snapped back really well. I'm extremely happy with my results with both. And I've been recommending Dr. Greensmith to people since I found him in 2016. Friends, family, other influencers, and they've all been so happy with their results as well. So I can't recommend him enough, and I also can't thank him enough. So the total of all of my surgeries ended up being around $82,000. From going into my first surgery, thinking I was spending $11K, to now 82,000 Australian dollars just to get a result where I'm able to breathe and able to feel comfortable is wild. It was mentally a fucking extreme struggle for me. It's not something I wish upon anybody. I definitely have some advice for anyone that's thinking about plastic surgery. I'm not against plastic surgery. I've had some procedures done that I am happy with and I didn't have any issues with. And just keeping this episode fully transparent, I wanted to also list the other things that I have had done. These were done by other people, but after that breakup of the long-term relationship I was in back in LA, I really wanted to just do something for me. It's something I wanted for ages, and I decided in the beginning of 2022 that I wanted to get liposuction on the back of my arms and my neck. It didn't matter, like I even put on a little bit of weight and it was like going straight to my face, and it was something I was really uncomfortable with. And I just thought, you know what, fuck it. We've just gone through COVID. I've just gone through one of the most horrific breakups of my life, and I'm going to go and do something for me. Yeah, it was an empowered decision. It wasn't something where I was like basing my self-worth upon, and it was something I did for me. And yeah, I didn't have any complications with that. I'm happy with the results. One thing I do have to say about liposuction is that they say that, you know, they remove those fat cells. You definitely can put weight on again. So yeah, definitely be aware of that going into liposuction. I've also had, which I've been very open about, I've also had Botox to my upper face and my lower neck as well. And I've also had filler in my lips and chin. I had a little bit in my cheeks years ago, but I would say that's gone now. That is everything that I have had done. And I really wanted to be transparent about that. I really don't want to be part of the problem of just setting unrealistic beauty standards. I feel really guilty for that. You know, I was really ashamed of the amount of surgery that I've had. It was far more than I ever wanted. And I think just that shame and fear of what other people would think really held me back from being truly honest about what I had had done. My advice to anyone considering getting plastic surgery: surgery won't bring you happiness. If you're not in the right space mentally, I also wouldn't suggest getting plastic surgery. If things go wrong, which they often can go wrong, or you might not get the desired result, you won't feel capable mentally of handling that situation, and it could be really dangerous. I was playing with fire doing what I did, and there could have been a chance of me not even being here to talk about it today. Mental health is a real thing, and you really need to make that a big priority when going into this as well. If you don't feel stable enough, then it's probably something that you shouldn't be doing because it's a really big risk. If your self-worth is low, try working on that first. And then if you still want to get surgery, you can make an empowered decision about it. Just don't do it from a place where it's like based on what somebody else thinks of you, hoping that it will make other people like you more. Do it for you. Do it feeling confident that you've done all of your research. Go to multiple consultations. I know that it costs like $300 per consult, but that $300 could be saving you $82,000. Take notes, ask questions. If you're very introverted and you don't feel good with difficult conversations, take someone with you to just kind of be there as a support and ask the question, what is your policy if things don't go right? How would you deal with that situation? What would I be paying out for if I had to do a revision? And really base your decision off of how they answer that. But how they react to you asking that question is also really important, in my opinion. Also, each surgeon's policy is different with that. It's not like a run-of-the-mill, everyone does the same thing. Each one is different, and the Board of Plastic Surgery doesn't tell them that they have to do things a certain way. So it's very important that you ask that question and find out what they would do. Definitely don't excuse a surgeon's bedside manner, like I spoke about earlier. If they seem a bit up themselves or arrogant now, just imagine what it would be like if things went wrong. It's not nice to deal with. Take it from me. Check qualifications to see what they specialize in. Make sure that they are a board certified plastic surgeon. Breast implant illness is definitely something that you should educate yourself in. I have not had any issues with it, and I'm not going to say that I won't because it can creep up at any time, but it is something that you absolutely should be doing your research on. Ask questions with your surgeon about that as well. And I would also definitely research the rate of breast implant illness with the type of implant that they're deciding to use. If you're listening to this and you are considering plastic surgery, I want you to know that you are beautiful exactly the way that you are. You don't need to get surgery done. If I could go back now and have worked on myself, surrounded myself with better people, and just really focused on loving myself more, I do like my results now, but putting myself through all of that just wasn't fucking worth it. And I was beautiful before I had any work done. And I just want you to know that you absolutely don't need to be getting any work done at all. You're perfect exactly the way that you are. If you found this episode helpful or know someone else that it could help, please spread the word, share it around, send it to someone who might need it right now. Please also know that if you want to chat to me, my DMs are always open to you guys, and I really love being able to connect with you further. I am so scared for this episode to go live, but I'm also really excited. I hope that it can help at least one of you. I love you guys. I'll see you on the next episode. Mwah. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please give it a share. You never know who might need a little emotional content in their life. For daily feel-good posts, follow @_emotional content on Instagram and TikTok. And don't forget to hit that follow button so you're notified every time a new episode drops. Your support means the absolute world to me.